All right, so 3:05, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Those of you that made it out of your busy schedules to be in a constricted class time that is already scheduled every week. But today we have, one last joiner coming through. That's okay. Um, Today is a very special class and a very special week in general. We're obviously talking a lot about commentary this week. Um, just because we're talking about commentary today, we're also talking about commentary on Thursday when we have our second class. I decided to dedicate a whole week to commentary, not because I want you all to become commentators. I know some of you already want to become that. But in the off chance that some of you want to make YouTube content or Twitch content, it is important to talk to somebody who has been in front of millions of cameras and been underneath like so much pressure and being kind of like these high pressure situations when there's a broadcast and there's millions watching and stuff like that. If you start to create your own content on YouTube or Twitch, you could eventually at some point get millions of people watching. Anyways, as you already heard from last week, today's guest is obviously Semmler. And as soon as I unfreeze this, there he is. Semmler, do a quick wave for us if you can. There we go. And I want to say welcome, Semmler. That worked out pretty well.
Should I unmute my mic now?
Yeah, now you're good. You're good to hop in. You're good to hop in.
Hi.
So the way that this is gonna work, I don't know if it's gonna be 1 hour. I don't know if it's gonna be the entire class. It's really just up to you guys, kind of feeling out how the flow goes. Right now the baseline is set for 1 hour, but if it kind of spills over, we'll go from there. For those of you that don't really know who Semmler is, CS:GO
That can
caster, also
happen.
yeah, it can happen. Yeah, it can happen. CS:GO commentator as well as Overwatch League commentator. So he has a big wealth of knowledge within the industry. The way that this is gonna work is I'm gonna ask the first question, and then from there, kind of as it starts to progress, you can raise your hand. I will walk around with a magic headset, and then you kind of put it on and you can ask your question. Remember to please state your name, say who you are, or else Semmler will forget who you are. So start off by saying your name, say what your question is, and then we'll go from there. Um, so the first question that I kind of want to start things off
Well,
is
Professor, could I start off? Actually, there's a couple
sure.
of things that I picked up on during that break there,
Yeah, go ahead.
and we can get in. I mean, I don't want to put off your questions, but first off, I have to say that I'm honored to be your first guest here in front of this class. That's really fantastic. I didn't know, so thank you very much for having me as your first guest, and I'm happy to see all of you here today. That's really exciting. And the other thing that I really wanted to pick up on is something that you mentioned there. I didn't know who you were talking to, but to quote a great man, Mike Rowe, from Dirty Jobs, "Don't follow your passion." That is actually something that has served me well, and that is something that actually could be very useful for you if you want to get into esports. Is that don't serve your passion or don't follow your passion. And what I mean by that is you may be trying to get in and you're obviously going to try and strike out for what you're most passionate about, whether that be commentary, journalism, hosting, interviewing, whatever the point is. But what happened for me was that I initially struck out on commentary, but at the time there were very few jobs in commentary. There was very little money to make. And so, in order to get more experience and to figure out how to actually function in the industry and how to get experience there, I had to go after things that I was less passionate about, just to get the experience, just to get the exposure, which involved, hosting, interviewing, organizing, producing, basically anything I can get my hands on that I was less passionate about than commentary. Right? Eventually, I always wanted to swing back to commentary, but for a span of maybe a year or so, I mean, I spent my time just doing everything but commentate, just trying to pay the bills, but also get as much experience as I could until the opportunity came up where I could switch into commentary. So that's a very good. You were saying, you're pointing out something there, that if an opportunity presents itself to maybe even get your toe to the in the door, whether it be something that you're passionate about or not, I that's the way to go, because then it's all esports, like any other industry, is about networking and it's about experience. And so if you can get your toe in the door doing something, then somebody knows you and you're getting experience. And then perhaps later on down the line after work, you're able to get to what it is that you actually set out to do to begin with, which may be commentary or whatever role that you really want to fill. So right there, I thought that was a very interesting point that you made in terms of, this website or this organization is looking to hire people. You miss every shot you don't take, and you never get the chance if you don't. I mean, even if you get the slightest chance to get somewhat close to what it is that you set out to do it. Take that opportunity, take that chance, because otherwise it's not going to happen. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there thinking, "Oh, what if?" And I was just waiting for the perfect opportunity. I was just waiting for what I want to do. But I think an important lesson is that the world doesn't cater to you, and you need to figure out how to fit in where you can in order to progress eventually towards your end goal. Never lose sight of your end goal. But if an opportunity is presented to you, don't stick your nose up. You gotta stay. You have to take everything that's given to you as experience and as time invested in the ultimate project of your career and what you want to do, which I suppose obviously given this class is esports.
Yeah.
So, you know, there we go. All right, so I'm done. I just wanted, before I forgot, I just wanted to get that out there because I thought that was an interesting point that we could talk about a little bit.
Yeah, and just to kind of really add on to what you're saying is, like, I think one of the most famous quotes, and I forget who said this, it was a StarCraft commentator. He said the number one currency in esports is contribution. Whatever you contribute to the actual industry builds up your portfolio more and more and more and more and more, and you have, like, it's honestly, it feels less of like a resume industry and more of like, what did you do to contribute to the space. But anyways,
Certainly, it's experience above all.
yeah.
It's networking and experience. Those are the two things that will get you anywhere. And I mean, that's not just esports; that's any industry. But really, in esports, people need to know that getting in through the door is that whatever you can do. Doesn't matter if it's your job or not. That's another thing that I've heard a lot recently. Actually, I've heard a lot of that where it's like, oh, but that's not my job. Well, it doesn't matter if it's your job or not. Do it because it's going to be a lesson learned. It's going to be experience, and it's going to potentially open doors for you down the line. And so those are just general things to keep in
Okay,
mind.
so I'm gonna ask the first question, and then kind of
For sure.
as we go through, raise your hand, ask at any
Hello,
point.
everybody. My name is
Um,
Sembler.
um, so I'm really curious, based on kind of that, even just segueing from that, what were you doing before esports? Kind of
I
like,
was
how did?
working. I was working. I think at the peak I had 3 jobs, and I was just working nonstop. I was in university like you guys, but given I don't know, I it didn't really click with me because I was doing a lot of night university at the time. I dropped out of high school and just wanted to get into university as fast as possible because I felt like I was wasting my time in the public system in high school, which I was, which because I wasn't respecting my teachers, I wasn't paying attention, and so it was obviously not a good fit. And so I got out of high school as quickly as possible, went to public college, and started taking afternoon and night classes so that I could have a job during the day because I needed money. And I got another job and then another job, and I realized I'm learning more on the job than I am at school, and so I'm just going to work. And so that's kind of in a weird way that's kind of how I got around to it because eventually I found a job where I really enjoyed myself and I and most of the people there were gamers and I liked gaming and so we it was kind of like the natural fit and from there you had like the whole gaming aspect where I could really focus on the gaming and then I just started streaming and I kind of just went from there. I mean I got into a game called Bloodline Champions which was an esports game, a game, one of the only games that I know of that was developed purely for esports, purely for competition. And so that just really got me going. And I don't know, there's so much to talk about, and I'm not very good at this because I haven't done this kind of conversation very often with students, etc. But let's say that I got into it by doing. And I still think it's possible today to do that. I know that there's a few naysayers out there now who say, "Oh, it'll never be possible to do it the way that we did." I mean, yes, okay, the situation has changed in esports. It's obviously gotten much bigger. It's obviously gotten much bigger. It's obviously gotten a lot more influence, exposure, money, all sorts of things right into it. But I still think that it is possible to do it the way that I did it, which is just by doing, by getting in there, showing that you're passionate, putting in the hours, and making it happen. And that's kind of how most of us, at least the guys that I started the Good Studio with, and then Room on Fire with, we all kind of just got into it by putting all our chips on the table and doing it. And that's kind of that would be kind of the message that I have. Don't let anything stand in your way. If you've got a goal, get after it. Wake up every day, and that's your goal, and get after it.
You kind of answered a few questions while you were going through
Sure,
that,
yeah, I
but
kind of
yeah,
bounced all over the place on that one. I'm sorry about
yeah.
that. We're
um,
warming up here.
yeah.
I got to do some DM, mental DM right now, and
Yeah.
just get my head in the game.
Is there something that kind of triggered your desire to commentate, or like like you were saying, the game that you kind of introduced you, and the
Sure, my
esports?
friends wouldn't shut up. Well, no, more like I wouldn't shut up because I would compete in the tournaments, and then back then, it was just super ghetto streams. It was like anybody pops a stream up, and then yeah, it was really that. Anybody pops a stream up, and then that's it. That's the tournament stream, and so whoever's doing the commentary, there you go. But at the time, StarCraft 2 was the bee's knees, right? It was that's where you watched pro play, but that's also, if you were interested in commentary, that's where you listen to the best commentators. And to this day, I will say that Tasteless and Artosis are the gods of commentary. They set the bar. And I think many commentators that came after them have used them as a model, myself included, in terms of how to do esports commentary and how to really make it fun to do and enjoy yourself and get hype and all that, right? And so I was playing a lot of StarCraft 2, but I was also playing a lot of Bloodline Champions, and so I would get knocked out of these Bloodline Champions tournaments, and I would listen to the streams and I'd be like, oh man, these guys, they suck. And all my friends got so fed up with me, with me just shooting my mouth off about that. They were like, dude, shut up and do it yourself then if you got that big a problem, right? And so eventually, that's pretty much what happened. I started up a stream. Back then it was Justin TV, and then it switched over to Twitch. But just started up a stream, and Bloodline Champions was a very special game because it had an in-game tournament system, and so all the games were right there in the game. I would go as far into the tournament as I could, get knocked out, and then I would just turn the stream on and just start casting immediately the remaining games in the tournament. And you could just pop in and cast them. There were no rights, there was no nothing, so you could just pop in and cast. And so that's what I did. And there was a company that was working at the time trying to provide tournaments for Bloodline Champions. It was a company called BL Gaming, Borderlands Gaming, and we would run tournaments, and that's where the best commentators at the time went. And so they reached out and asked if I wanted to commentate with them, and one step leads to another. I'm casting Bloodline Champions for BL Gaming, and DreamHack reached out. Sunlock Studios, the developers of Bloodline Champions, reached out and asked if I could make it to DreamHack. They didn't have a budget to get me out there, hence why you guys should work, because if I didn't have money in the bank, I couldn't have bought my ticket to get out to Sweden at the time because they didn't have money to get me out there. They were a small studio. They're just like, hey, man, if you can make it, make it. If otherwise, we really like what you're doing. And I'm like, well, screw it. I got $1,500 in my savings account. That's going to a ticket to Sweden. I slept on the hotel room floor of a friend. And it was just like, if something comes of this, great. If not, I'll have spent an awesome week in Sweden with my friends. Because finally, anybody who goes to a LAN knows you can finally put faces to names, right? All these guys you spent so many hours with, hey, now we're having a beer together. And so that was the whole thing. It was just an opportunity. That's what I mean by don't miss out on opportunities, because you don't know what comes next. You don't know what happens, right? It could have just been a total crapshoot. I could have spent all my savings and gone back home broke and been like, well, back to work, right? But through being there at that event, I met James Harding, Too Good, who was at the time the esports manager for Sunlock Studios. We hit it off, and then DreamHack Winter rolls around 6 months later. They invite me, and this time they had a budget. And so I was like, oh, sweet. Now they can pay for me to go, right? And like, it's not getting paid to do the event. It's just like, okay, cool. They can pay for the ticket. And then we come up with the idea for the good studio, and it just keeps rolling, right?
So far, no questions. Seems like they're just listening to your wisdom.
My wisdom. This is, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
if I got wisdom, but we
Yeah.
can go from there. Yeah.
Something interesting that I'm kind of curious about is, do you have any vocal training?
None.
None.
It's all learned on the road. Actually, what's fun is that I sat on a flight, and this was to ESWC Montreal. I sat on a flight with a lead singer for a band, and the whole band were on the flight, but it just so happened that the lead singer was next to me. And so this is after a couple years of just shouting, right? Because at the time, that's what commentary was. You get hype, you shout. And my voice would be destroyed. The first dream hacks, I would lose my voice for a week after, because it's just, you're shouting for 12 hours a day. And so there's no management, there's no use of your core, right? There's no management of anything, and so you're just shouting because that's what you think you have to do, and so you're just destroyed. None of us had any idea what the hell we were doing. We were just like, oh yeah, you get hype, we're having fun, this is awesome, and whatever. I'll have a whiskey and I'll worry about my throat tomorrow, right? So I mean, that's pretty much the way you go. And so I sat next to this. I was sitting next to this lead singer, and we hit it off, and I was asking him, hey, exactly that question. Do you have anything that you do before you go live for a show? Do you have anything that you do on a regular basis? And so he was the first one to kind of, give me a little insight into doing humming bars, right? Or if you're warming up, there's certain things you can do. One thing that I started doing, and Anders gave me all sorts of shit for it back in the day. Sorry, I don't know if I should curse, but
go ahead.
It's like Anders gave me all sorts of guff for it, right? Where I would take an article, and then I would just read the article out loud before going, and I would be way over the top reading the article. And so you're putting your emphasis on certain words, and you're going up and you're going down, and just trying to get the vocal cords warmed up. And another trick that I learned was to hum. And by humming, it's you got a song in your head, right? Put some music on. You don't care if anybody hears you or whatever. You just put some music on in your headset and you hum along to it. And you hum, you start out low, and then you work your way up, and then you get louder and louder as things leave up, and so those were two of the tricks I think that really that helped a lot, because reading a speech out loud, you're warming up your mouth, you're warming up everything, you're feeling like, okay, now things are good, and so you can pronounce your words properly and you can enunciate properly. But then humming also warms up the vocal cords, but also warms up the nasal cavities, and gets everything, humming. So you're going along, right? And so if you do a little bit of humming, that just gets everything warmed up. You get the vibrations, it shakes everything loose, it gets everything good. And then reading a paragraph or two paragraphs or an article. I chose Christopher Hitchens because he's such a verbose, writer. The variety is wild, and so you can just sit there and read a Hitch article. That'll warm you up pretty well, right? And so those are probably the two things that I've done a lot of. Another thing that's good is tea and honey. And don't get caffeine, because if you do caffeine, then by the third or fourth cup you're buzzing, and that's not good, right, in the broadcast. So try and find tea that's like chamomile or herbal tea or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's hot, it's warm, and you put a little bit of honey in there. And at the end of the day, you do a hot toddy. So a hot toddy is, if I remember correctly, it's tea, it's honey, and it's also whiskey or rum, high proof, better. At the end of the day, you do that, and that's what's going to get you through. That's what's going to get you through a week-long tournament, because that'll just warm everything down and get everything all nice. And then the next day, you wake up, you're good to go. So it's stuff like that that you pick up on over time. So but yeah, definitely humming. Humming is the key.
If you're at a bar, you just ask, hey, can I get a beer, a warm beer, a drop of honey, and some tea? Just put it all together.
No. Tea, whiskey, lemon, and then if they get fancy, they'll do what is it again? If they get fancy, they'll do cloves. They'll put cloves in it.
Wow.
And that's interesting.
Yeah.
But go walk up, and then you'll become a hot toddy connoisseur, because every freaking barman does it differently.
Yeah.
And so then you'll get your bar that does your right hot toddy, and then
interesting. I've never heard of that. That's actually a good tip.
That's a lifesaver. If you get sick, if you have a sore throat, if you have anything like that, hot toddy is like the commentator's secret weapon.
We have our first question. Just put it around your neck and then ask away.
Hello. My name is Martin. How are you?
Hey, Martin. How's it going? I'm loving life, man. How you doing?
My question is, what is your most memorable event that you have commentated, or like memorable play that you remember, one that really sticks out?
All right, so these are kind of like my top two events, I think. Maybe there's a third one as well. All right, so what the hell? I've got an ad going in my headset. Where is this coming from? Oh man, don't have Twitch in the background on a tab. Okay, Twitch is closed. We're good. Let's see. MLG Columbus was awesome. It was such a sick event. The fans were awesome. It was an NA event, which weren't happening that often back in the day. MLG took a risk having that or being able to get that event going. It was a lot of Europe at the time. There wasn't that much going on in NA. Could you fill a stadium in NA? All these sorts of questions, right? Man, MLG Columbus was rad. The fans were sick. The hype was unreal. The matches were fantastic. And then you also had Luminosity just on this tear, right? And so it was this whole that you had the stories. I mean, you had the stories with the Brazilians just going right on through everything, and you just had this sick atmosphere there. And also, and this is something I tweeted about it recently because Adam Apicella has just started his new company with Sundance, right? These are the MLG guys. And if you don't know those guys, those are guys that you want to know because they have run essentially they're responsible for building esports up to the point that it is today. But Adam Apicella used to be the head guy for MLG Columbus, and this is why I also say like opportunities, but nothing. The small things, will always be remembered. And so my example for why Adam was such a stand-up guy and why people will work to the death for him, and I will always have his back, is that it's just small things. We were doing rehearsals for MLG Columbus, and it was a long day. Some of us had flown in that day. We're jet lagged, we're tired, but we're doing rehearsals to get everything spit spot right for the broadcast in the stadium because you want everything to be top notch. And so we're all a little bit frazzled and a little bit stressed. And he comes over and he's got I don't know how many thousands of things on his mind, right? He's the head of the show. He's the guy who's got all of the plates. You know, he's just balancing everything. And he walks up to me. He's like, "Hey Sam, how's it going?" And we're like, it's rehearsal, you know, and in esports you're going to figure out, you know, it's rehearsal, so you could probably have sat there for 45 minutes without anything happening, but you need to be there, right? And so, you know, you're being patient. He's like, "Okay, yeah, it's good. Okay, you guys good? You need anything?" We're a little hungry, right? Because we've been there for 2 hours, so we hadn't had anything to eat. We were kind of just, you know, waiting to be able to go and get food. And so I was like, "Okay, I got you. Okay, cool. Well, you know, hang in there." And he comes back 10 minutes later and he had a bag full of like 10 subs. He'd gone across the street, across the venue, and brought back a bunch of like turkey club sandwiches or something for us, like a bunch of turkey sandwiches for us. Just to, you know, just to be like, "Oh, you guys are hungry. Here, cool. Sandwiches, subs, have them." And at that point, I think all of us basically just like looked at him like he was, you know, just the Messiah or something. He just showed up out of nowhere and he's got, you know, he's got sandwiches for us. And this guy is awesome. We need to work with this guy forever at that point. So if there's any bit of wisdom there, it's that going the extra little step, because Adam didn't need to go and get us sandwiches. He didn't need to do that for us, right? He could have just been like, "Right, hang in there, guys, hang tough, and I know you guys will be all right." He didn't need to do that. But just the fact that he went out of his very busy day to go and get us sandwiches so that he knew that his broadcast talent would be on point, that's the kind of little extra detail that to this day I still remember clear as day. And to this day, I'll always have his back because he had ours. And it's those little things, right, in terms of leadership that make all the difference. And so going forward, I would highly recommend that, you know, given those sorts of situations, always think, what's the little extra thing that I could potentially do in this situation to make things better? And everybody's stressed, everybody's worked up. There's all sorts of things going on, but that would be one little bit that I would pass on. Absolutely. MLG Columbus is always going to be one of the biggest events, I think, in CSGO history just because of how amazing it was. And for working it as a commentator, it also represented a big shift at the time in commentator quality of life. Because before that, MLG Columbus, MLG, were the first tournament organizer to treat us well, to really elevate us up to something that perhaps we thought, let's say they really treated us special. They really took care of us. Before that, it was ESL, it was DreamHack, it was, you know, shitty flights, end of the day, inconvenient, and then you're sharing hotel rooms and maybe you get food, maybe you don't know, right? Up until then, it was just like you're doing it because you really want to do it. And then MLG came along and they were like, "Right, when do you want to take a flight?" I don't know. When do you want to book the flight? "Okay, cool. Here, we're going to get you this flight. We think this flight is good." Awesome. Premium economy, straight over. It was unreal. It was like Christmas come early. We get to the hotel. We had our own individual hotel rooms. So which was unheard of at the time. So all of a sudden you have this luxury of space and just being able to sit in your own hotel room and not have to worry about the guy snoring next to you. And, you know, just, and then the food and everything else on top of it. So MLG, you know, like if you guys need to, I would think if you're based in North America, Adam Apicella, Sundance Di Giovanni, right? These are names that you guys need to know because these are the guys who built it up, and you're their next door neighbor. So They're in Columbus, Ohio, I think. I don't know. Where are we right now? I can't remember.
Like near Detroit. We're in Windsor, Ontario.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world. You're close enough. These are guys that you want to know, I would say. So definitely, so that would be my bid on MLG. The other one I think that was that I'll always remember and that I thought really got everything hype was the first ESL in Cologne, because that was a time when we hadn't had anything like that up to date for CS. It was always, okay, we're gonna get like 7, 8, 1,000 fans in. What was it? 15,000 fans in Cologne, and from different nationalities as well, which was really interesting because Cologne is such a central hub in Europe. You can travel from basically everywhere. And so we had this whole Polish cheering section. We had the Swedish cheering section, for like Virtus Pro at the time, and well, there weren't that many cheering for Fnatic, but there were some Fnatic fans there. And then, but you had the whole French section as well that were just singing the national anthem. It was just like, it was this mad experience where I was like, oh, okay, we made it. Like, this is sick. This is so cool. And also, I mean, it's just a massive venue. The impression that you get when they're in that venue, you couldn't even hear. We had to crank, the volume up on your headset. You had to crank it up to the max, and so you're basically getting tinnitus, which is why I hear E all the time now. But like you've got it cranked up to the max because you couldn't hear yourself because the fans were making so much noise in the venue. And so I think that'll be another. Those are pretty much my top 2 events, I think, of throughout it so far. I mean, the other honorable mentions, I guess, are the Overwatch League finals. I think the New York final was mind blowing, and then it obviously Philadelphia crushed. But the New York one, I think, for all of us who are working Overwatch League, we hadn't had an event that big yet, and so it was a real question of whether or not people were even going to show. Because you're just thinking, can we fill an arena for Overwatch? We don't know. Can we fill one? I don't know. But then not only did we fill one, but we filled one with so many passionate fans who had the jerseys and the cosplay and the chants and the cheering. It was awesome. It was absolutely sick. So it was mind-blowing just how sick that event turned out to be, especially after all of us going through that grind of the season for the first year. So yeah, I think those would probably be my top 3 right now as far as events that I've attended and worked.
Cool. We do have another question over here.
Hey, my name's Riley.
Hey, Riley.
So, my question is, you've clearly casted multiple different games. I've basically only done one, and it's the one I'm passionate about. But do you find it's helpful to know how to commentate other games? Like, does the had the wording for this better earlier, but do you find that like casting other games helps your casting for the rest of them as well, essentially?
Certainly. And I would go so far as to say that everything leads into casting. Casting is yourself. You're putting yourself on the line. You're putting yourself out there. But it's also all the other skills that you can pick up from any other role that you can find in the industry. So whether that be production, whether that be interviewing, hosting, everything lends itself towards commentary, because commentary is just a mixed bag of tricks that you're always pulling out of. But nothing helps that more than being able to cast different games, because different games means that you have to learn. You have to learn the different kinds of pacing that a game can have, and how to properly hit certain points in a round or a map or whatever it is, right? You need to know where you can talk, where you can't talk, how you need to handle this situation. Can I get hype here? Can I not get hype here? Do I have time to tell a joke? All these things, right? You're trying to figure out in the span of a game, and different games are going to be very different. So let's say CS:GO, I think, is the ultimate in terms of commentary, because you have a natural ebb and flow in it. It's just you're at the beginning, the buy phase of the round, very slow, right? Very low. And then you're going to slowly ramp up everything until the action happens in the round. And so the action happens in the round. Usually the culmination of that is a bomb explodes or is diffused, some kind of clutch moment. And then it spikes right back down again. And then you have that valley, right? Peaks and valley. And so CS:GO, you're always going to have that rhythm, and you get very used to that rhythm where you're very hype, but then you also have time for anecdotes, you have time for jokes, and you have time to bring the energy back down again. And so you always have that up and down. Overwatch is very nonstop in your face action for 4 minutes, right, or however long a map goes. But it is a different game. You're going to be high paced into it, trying to fit a joke or trying to fit an anecdote in here and there, but really you're just trying to process what's happening on the screen as quickly as possible, and then trying to relay the most important bit to your audience, because it is just very high paced gameplay. And so that's a different skill, right? It took me quite a bit, actually, a couple of months before I started feeling comfortable at the beginning of the first season of Overwatch, casting Overwatch. It was wild. It was the Mercy meta. Fights never ended. All of a sudden, people are getting rezzed up. You're thinking, oh, man, this is great. There's a fight. They won the fight. No, bro. Now that Mercy's there. She rezzes them back. Oh, let's go again. Round 2. Now the other Mercy's going to res. And so it was just nonstop action. So coming in from Counter-Strike, where I had my, peaks and valleys, all of a sudden it was just straight hardcore, I don't know, a drag race, it felt like. Just nonstop action. And then you go back and you do StarCraft 2. StarCraft 2, many opportunities, much slower pace, much like I think StarCraft 2 is the little brother of like Dota and LoL, in terms of where you actually have Dota and LoL, you can tell your life story in the span of a match. You can do whatever the hell you want with that game. You're going to have to get hyped for maybe 5 minutes out of a 40-minute game. So you better be good at filling and coming up with some funny jokes, which is why I love Doa and Monty. Their broadcast, Doa just kills it. That's him in his element, because he's always going to have the kooky reference or the nerd thing or whatever. Like, he's so good at that. He's so funny. And so LoL is his game, I think, where he can really shine. But that's the thing. Each game is going to have its own element, but in order to become a better commentator, you should experiment. You should push your comfort zone. You need to get out there and try different games. And then you need to go out and try different roles. Doing interviewing and hosting helps me to learn how to open a show, how to open a match, how to take the mic, how to take the handoff, how to give the handoff, do these sorts of things, right? And so you have to be approaching commentary like everything that, oh man, not even that. I mean, you need to be approaching commentary like everything feeds into commentary, and not only just what's in front of the camera, but what's behind the camera as well. Because the more you know about what your producer is doing, the more you know about what's going on behind the scene, the limitations that they have, what they have on their plate, what they're dealing with going into a show, the better you can then shape your side of the broadcast. Because if you're aware that they need to hit this many sponsors and they need to hit this ad break and they need to have this thing, everything, then you can already start building your show around what you know they need to hit. And so my advice is don't do everything. Just do everything. Don't be like, oh, I'm just going to focus on this one game and this one role. If you have a chance to do something else, do it. Just get out there and get as much experience as possible, because it'll always come back to your one goal, whatever your goal is. Everything is useful. And so it's not a waste of time. If you're like, oh man, I really don't want to have to do this interviewing thing or whatever, doesn't matter. Do it, because it probably will. Odds are it'll feed back into what you actually want to do, which is hosting, commentary, whatever role, if we're talking about in front of the camera.
Cool. So we have another question over here. Now they're starting to roll. Now we got
For sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Colin.
Hey, Colin, how's it going?
Good. I was just wondering, for like commentating something like the Overwatch League, which is like franchising, is it like a different atmosphere for a commentator than, like, let's say like the MLGs or the DreamHacks?
Certainly. It's very different. And that was a real culture shock for me when I went to Overwatch League, because all of a sudden I had to worry about corporate interests. I had to worry about working for a corporation. I had to worry about not being this freewheeling dealing cowboy from Counter-Strike and the rest of esports, where it was still very open. And so these are the things that you have to take into account as well, and you have to figure out the balance with yourself when you're a commentator, because I think a commentator has to stay true to himself at all times. Otherwise, you come off as unauthentic, and nobody wants to listen to somebody who doesn't actually care about what they're talking about. And so, but at the same time, so long as your goal or your focus remains true, which for me has always been commentary, I don't really care about all the other stuff. Like, for me, it's commentary. So how do I find myself with the limitations? Because there are limitations when you're working with a bigger organization like that. There are limitations on what you can say and topics and what you need to do, and you need to hit these sponsors. You need to do this, that, and other, right? So it's much more structured of a broadcast. And so when you're working with that was a big learning lesson, let's say, a learning opportunity for me, which was, and kind of the reason why I went for it, because I could have kept going with CS after Room on Fire fell apart and and Anders and I split up. I could have kept going with CS, but it just so happened that I got the offer to do Overwatch League at that moment, and it couldn't have happened at a better time. It's almost providential because it's just like, oh, here is this massive learning opportunity that just appeared, and I can go and learn what it is to function in a bigger group, not just a small group, right? Like everything in esports before that, but how do I function in a corporate atmosphere where there's layers of management, and everybody's got their different roles, and you can't just go out and say, I'm going to do this, and you go and do it. You have to, I'm going to do this, and then I got to go and check with this guy, and this guy. But that's just a different system. It's to each his own, right? It's different. It's not necessarily a bad system. It's just a different system. And that's what I had to learn going into Overwatch League was, okay, now I have this producer. I have a talent producer. I have a director. I have all these guys that I need to actually work with. And I'm going to be working with them for 8 months. So how do I build an interpersonal relationship with these guys so that we're on the same page, so that they understand that when I'm going to crack a joke, they shouldn't mute my mic because, they know, right? They hopefully know me to know that I'm a professional and that I'm not going to throw us under the bus, but let me have my fun. And those are all the challenges that you have with a bigger team like that. And when you go into a corporate environment, is I think interpersonal relationships. You need to be able to work with these guys and build that trust that maybe you spent 2 years building with your other producers in freelance esports because you guys came up together. And so my example is that I had a Cronquist. Nicholas Cronquist. We came up together. He was a producer who worked with DreamHack, with ESL, with others, with Faceit. Came up doing CS. Fragbite was the one that really got us close. But he could read my mind. It was like symbiosis. I was already going to crack a joke, and he already had the dildo photoshopped into the thing. Like it was done. It was already there. Right? We were on that level. And so you can get a producer like that, but that's not. That's not what you're going to necessarily experience right out the gates if you go into a corporate model, because a corporate model, there's all these other responsibilities that come into it. There's everything else that plays into it. And you maybe, instead of having 3 people or 4 people or 5 people in the production room, you have 25 or 30 people like we had at Overwatch League. And so it's much more diffused, and it's harder to have that one-on-one relationship with your producer. And so that's probably the biggest lesson that I had to learn going into Overwatch League was how to function in a bigger group where I couldn't just rely on my ego and my weight to just throw it around the way that I could in esports, in the freelance esports world, where it's like, okay, I'm Semmler, I say this, you do this, right? I had to go there and be like, I'm Semmler, and they'd be like, haha, cool. And I'd be like, okay, great. Now I got to relearn. now how does this work, right? I got to relearn how to actually, frame an argument and frame a point. And I think we should do this with the broadcast. Why? It's not just, because I say so. It's because I think this will benefit us in this way, right? So there was a lot. There was definitely a lot to learn there. It was a challenge for sure. But that's kind of been the story so far. It's been a series of challenges. And each time you just have to be receptive to the lessons that are trying to get thrown in your face and not cover yourself up. Don't try to self-protect. Don't try to protect at all times. And if something's coming at you, it's usually for a good reason. And so if somebody's giving criticism, or if something's not working, don't just say, oh, it's this or that or other X reason. Look at yourself first and understand, and try to understand why perhaps the linking points, and this is something that people overlook so easily, which is, I have all these other things that aren't working and they're all shit. And it's like, well, what's the one thing that those things have in common? Yeah, that's right. Might be you, right? And so it's very easy to fall into that trap of blaming everything on everything else, right? And so my one bit of wisdom in these sorts of situations, regardless of esports, is look at yourself first, figure out what you could be doing better and what you can take responsibility for, because that will allow you to progress further and faster than if you're constantly blaming others. And that's probably the biggest lesson that we had to learn here at Overwatch League was, okay, let's stop blaming others and let's figure out how we can get our own house in order. And figure things out. So, yeah, there we go. I'm all over the place today.
No, it's cool. It's cool. We have another question here.
All right. So, hello, my name is Daniel.
Hey, Daniel.
Hi. I kind of wanted to add on to your point before this question where you said don't just focus on one thing, because I've been color casting League for 6 years, and all of a sudden Fortnite came out, and I'm like, okay, now I got to jump on Fortnite. And then I came to this school where I had to cast Rocket League and Overwatch, and it was just a totally different experience, which was really cool. One thing I wanted to ask is if Overwatch League just kind of went under, what would be like the next big game that you would jump on?
Ooh, oh man, next big game. I ask myself that fairly frequently, and right now I gotta be honest with you and say that I have no fucking idea. Right now, all right. So let's say, oh man, this is a school. I shouldn't be cursing. I'm sorry. I'm too used to it now. We're talking esports, so I just fall back into habits. I don't quite know because it seems like auto chess was a thing, but that's dropped off. Battle Royale is a thing, but it's very hard to spectate and it's very hard to do well. So I mean, if we're talking about big tier one kinds of events or games, something to really make or break on. I'm not sure about auto chess and I'm not sure about battle royales. Fortnite doesn't really seem to want to do esports in the esports way, which is fine. I actually appreciate the fact that they want to go for a different model, which is something that we've been talking about for a while. Can we stop trying to shoehorn regular gamers into esports and just let the esports stand on its own? And if you want to do something different, that's perfectly fine. And that's kind of the way that Fortnite have gone, where there's like, we want to appeal to a broader audience. We don't want to be about esports and competition. We just want to do our thing, which is involving influencers and mainstream stars and athletes and these sorts of things into it, right? So, which I think is fantastic. So great, different models, always better, right? More diversity, always better, right? In these sorts of scenarios. I think that's great. But when it comes to like the next big game,
what about Riot's games? Maybe.
Yeah, Riot's going to have this support that's mad. But I think, let's take Project A for example. It's not going to come up for another 2 years. So I at least, and I'm not saying that because I have insider information. I'm just saying that off of what I saw on Twitter, right? I'm just saying the footage that I saw is it looks very rough to me. And that goes for most of their games that they announced, apart from obviously the card game, which looks cool. I might try it. I don't know, but I'm not a huge card game buff. But Project A, I think, is another year and a half down the line. Which all right. So the thing is, I think the more valuable information or wisdom or whatever advice that I can give here is whether you think it's going to be big or not, try to be first. Because Anders and I, the timing that we had where CS was getting no viewership back when we streamed CS at the beginning. It was 3,000 viewers was a great night. That was like, oh man, we crushed it. Awesome. And it was at a time when you could still make money on Twitch, so that helped. But it's just like for us, it was getting those 3,000 viewers. That was awesome, right? And that's kind of what I would go with here is don't focus too much on the make it big or make it, that sort of picture. Try and focus on something that allows you to be you, that allows you to feel comfortable so you can have a good time doing it. Because if you don't like doing it, well, why do it at all in that sense? Because you're just going to hate what you're doing, and that sucks. So, I mean, if you want to do commentary, right, that's what I'm saying. Because obviously earlier I was saying do things that you need to do to get experience, yes. But when it comes to just like commentary like this, as you're trying to force yourself to do a different game, just because, I don't know if I would say that. I would say find a game that you like, and if the timing lines up where you like it and you're there somewhat first and you're getting some decent viewership, roll with it and see what happens. Because that's kind of how Anders and I it broke out for us in CS:GO, where we were some of the first guys to get in streaming CS:GO when nobody cared about CS:GO. And then we didn't know that it was going to be. I just thought, hey, I'm enjoying this. It's a really interesting, challenging game that I like a lot, and it's forcing me to do better commentary. And so, sweet, I'm going to run with it. And if I get viewers, great. And it turns out that I did get viewers, and Anders got viewers, and then we paired up, and then we rolled with it. And then DreamHack Winter 2013 happened, and CS:GO Lounge happened, and all of a sudden, here we are, right? It was a crazy ride. And so, more than looking for like what's the next big game, even a small game can get you noticed. Because I started with BLC. BLC wasn't LOL. It wasn't StarCraft. It wasn't, it was a tiny game. We had peak 3,000 viewers. Like that was the game. At DreamHack Summer, we had 3,000 viewers. So, I mean, it doesn't need to be this big blockbuster game. Just find a game that you really enjoy, that you can put your heart and soul into, and people will notice that, and they will see that, and then perhaps something comes from that. That's probably the better advice than to go and try and hit some AAA title and hope that you go up on Fortnite, because there you're dealing with guys who are entrenched in the space like Golden Boy or whatever, and it's going to be tough competition. The same way I didn't go into StarCraft 2 commentary. I love StarCraft 2. I still play it today, but at the time it was completely locked down by Day 9, Tasteless, Artosis. It was like there was no way you were going to become a commentator. They had the top tier locked down already. So I played StarCraft 2, and I did my things here and there, interviewing, hosting, and some casting with Apollo and stuff like that. But it was never going to become the mainstay. I had to find my own way. And so that's what I would recommend to you, is like try and find your thing and just be true to yourself and stick to it. And that could probably that you'll probably get out all right.
Cool. Another question, passing it back to Marty.
Hello again.
Hey, man.
I just got a question for commentating, for when you're commentating a match, for what are some good like improv strategies to keep the flow of the broadcast going and entertaining to watch?
Always be receptive to your co-commentator.
All right.
That's the first rule.
Yeah.
And just always like, all right. So the first rule of commentary, I think. All right, let's see. How can we phrase this? Because it's been a while since I thought of this. First rule of commentary is be entertaining. But then at the same time, first rule of commentary is find a good partner. If you're going to do a duo, the first thing that Anders and I did was have a 4-hour-long conversation where we talked about all sorts of crazy stuff that had nothing to do with the game. And we realized, oh, okay, we could have this conversation over a beer at a bar. We'll be fine. Same thing with Hex. That's just like, okay, can we get along? Can we have a conversation? Can we be friends? Can we talk about stuff? Do we have stuff in common, right? Like movies, books. Hex is a English major. He's a total cinephile. He's read everything. So I knew that we would get along just fine. So I think that's probably the most important thing, is the game knowledge. All right. I heard an interesting point recently, which was hire for attitude, train for skills. And this is what businesses tend to do, or at least competitive businesses tend to do. You can train for skills. You can't train for attitude. And so when you're a commentator looking for a co-commentator, look for attitude. Maybe he's a little rough around the edges. Maybe he doesn't have all the handoffs down. Maybe he doesn't have the finer parts, right, of the job down. But if you guys get along and you're entertaining together and you feel like I could talk to you for hours over a beer, you'll be fine. Because the key thing is be entertaining. The people don't want to listen to a classroom. And I feel like sometimes that's, Anders and I experimented with that. We went pretty hard the other way, where we started just doing stats and strats. And we stopped we stopped with the anecdotes and the jokes. And we just try to be really, we want to be informative and really open for, novice viewers who have no idea what's going on, right? That's what we focused on, trying to educate. And we turned the stream into a classroom. That's not the way to go. The way to go is to just be entertaining and have fun, and then the viewer will learn with you as you go. And so if you're trying to get into commentary, if you're trying to get out there, be yourself and be entertaining, right? Be yourself and just have a good time. And then find a guy that you can have a good time with, guy or gal, whatever. But find somebody you can have a good time with. And if you guys feel like you can sit at a bar and have and it doesn't need to be a bar, obviously, like Esports alcoholic over here, but like if you just need to, if you just want to sit there and have a drink with somebody, or if you feel like you guys could talk about anything for hours, you're set. Because the day is going to come when you have to fill for hours on a stream, and if you don't get along well with your co-commentator, you're going to be in a dark place. So it's going to get real rough real fast. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I would say is, find a commentator who shares your attitude. And once the skills happen. When Cass and I first started casting BLC, we spent hours. Same with Anders and Vendetta. We spent hours after the broadcast and before the broadcast. I would call Cass from work. I would be having a smoke break, just like calling him up, and he's on the other side of the country, and I didn't care. I was just calling him like, hey man, I thought about this thing that we did last night. I think we could probably do it better this way. He'd be like, yeah, okay, didn't think about that, right? And like we just have this back and forth. I'd be like, okay, great, cool, see you later tonight, and then I'd hang up, right? But like that's kind of what the relationship that you need is. Find guys who have similar goals that you guys get along with, and then figure out how to just like go with it. That's the only thing. don't get all hung up on the game knowledge and all that sort of stuff. That's way less important than just having fun. Because if you're having fun, then hopefully the audience is having fun, and if they're having fun, they'll learn the game with you.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, like I recently started commentating Rocket League, and it's literally exactly what you
Oh
said.
yeah.
Like you don't really like game knowledge you can learn really quickly if you just kind of pay attention. And a lot of games it's kind of like chess where there's moves and there's certain strategies. Once you learn those strategies, you can just regurgitate that information like consistently, right? But it's more so about like if you're just having a good time, having a blast, like it's gonna be way more of a valuable stream just to everybody, just for everybody in general.
100% it. That's our experience. From day one, it's always been people coming up, man, like, hey, I really enjoyed listening to the broadcast. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but you guys sounded great. So, I had a good time. And the number of times that's happened is wild. And it makes you kind of realize that the 5% or the 1%, I don't know. It depends on how hard we want to meme. But like there's a hardcore viewership audience out there who are going to be intensely focused on stats and strats. My opinion is that those people are going to find them whether you say it or not, because they're going to find it fun to go onto HLTV and find that kind of information. They're going to find it already. You can cater to them a little bit. I'm not saying don't use stats and strats, but I'm saying that the vast majority of the viewership, at least through my experience, the vast majority of the people tuning in, they just want to be entertained. They just want to have a good time. They don't want that. This is their form of relaxation. This is their form of entertainment. So don't get too hung up on all the brass tacks stuff. Just have a good time.
Okay, we have another question.
All right, hello. My name's Preston.
Hey, Preston.
All right, so I'm just wondering, what's your opinion on the next season of OWL with their away and home games, but also even more than that, with Blizzard just putting out at BlizzCon that there's gonna be an Overwatch 2, and they're like expanding on the original product.
For sure. I mean, I don't. To be frank, I don't know too much about Overwatch 2. I know about as much as you guys do with the videos. I wasn't at BlizzCon, and Blizzard don't communicate. We're different, right? So Blizzard don't really communicate any of that development stuff to us at all. I mean, I'm there to do Overwatch League, and that's it. So I can't really feed too much information over to Overwatch 2. What I can say is that what I've seen so far looks cool, but it also kind of similar to Project A. It looks like it's early in development. It looks like there isn't a whole lot that they could show us just yet, apart from what is it, theatric trailer or whatever, right? Like that's so Overwatch 2. I think seems interesting, but I mean, right now I haven't seen so much that I wouldn't say it just looks like an expansion and not a second game. But I think it's very early days, and we just have what we got to see, which was a cinematic trailer and maybe a little bit of gameplay, right? So cool beans. Overwatch 2 is cool. What I'm much more excited about is next year, because this is what we've been working for the past 2 years, which is now we've managed to do it 1 year in the studio. Last year we managed to do it the year in the studio, but we also managed to do the homestands. And all three of the homestands last year crushed. And it was just like the grand finals. The fans that show up are hype. They're super sick. They're super passionate. They're showing up with jerseys. They're showing up with cosplay. They're just there. They're chanting. They're having a great time. And we did that in a massive venue in Dallas, in a big venue in Atlanta, and a big venue in Los Angeles. So what makes me really excited about next year is that, dude, it's going to be sick. If that's what it is every week, it's the best feeling ever, because it's not about being stuck in a studio anymore. Now you're traveling around, you're getting to meet fans, and you're filling arenas, and it's going to be something that people can look forward to, because it isn't going to be, oh, it's the same week in Burbank every week, and so the same people are going and all yada yada yada. Now it's like people can look 3 months in advance and say, oh, sick, this date the match is happening here in this arena, I gotta book tickets. And so people who show up to these events are going to be way more hype, because it's going to be spread out all over the place. And there's going to be some matches in Europe and China and North America. It's going to be all spread out everywhere. So this is what we've really worked for the past 2 years, I think, is the circuit and what we're going to get out of this year. So, I mean, I'm super stoked, because the atmosphere in Dallas and Atlanta and LA was rad. When we did the homestands, man, it was sick. And then the grand finals in New York and Philly, same thing. Super sick, right up there with the biggest and best esports events that I've been a part of in the past. So, I mean, I've got nothing but positive things to say, because I really do think after having this year of testing where we got to experience Atlanta and Dallas, and we got to see perhaps that this is what it could be next year, I think everybody is just super focused and super happy to be working on the project, and that it looks good. But I mean, is that what you were asking about, or is that was that the question in the or
He
the
said yeah.
right?
I'm already on the other
Yeah.
side of the room with another question, but he said
Okay, for
yeah.
sure.
He said yeah.
Yeah, no,
um,
we're all just super hype. I think Overwatch 2, I mean, based off of what we've seen so far from BlizzCon, I don't think that we see it next year anyway. So I think it's much more of a 2021 kind of thing, if that. So right now, I think the focus is Overwatch League 2020 and taking it on the road and really getting out there and having way more exposure and way more chances to interact with fans. So nothing but positive vibes.
cool. We have another question over here.
It's Riley again. So,
Hey, Riley.
so, my entire casting experience is on Super Smash Bros., which is a game with just one viewpoint. What do you think the challenges would be of learning a game like Counter-Strike or Overwatch that has a lot of different viewpoints and figuring out what's going on there?
Practice, practice, practice. You're gonna screw up a lot. You're gonna miss a lot of frags. You're just gonna miss. It's gonna suck because you're gonna be like, oh man, I'm building this story over here on this part of the map because I think this is the strategy, and then all of a sudden there's a triple kill on the other side of the map and you missed it all. And that really just comes from experience, practice, and experience. You're going to know the teams better. Based on the game, let's say, based on whichever game. Let's take Counter-Strike for example. I know that this one specific team likes to run these sorts of strategies on their CT side of this map, and so I'm expecting them to play more aggressive on these parts of the map. And so when I observe, I'm going to be trying to follow those players a little bit more because I'm expecting more action on that side of the map at the beginning, right, of the round. And then they'll fall back, and then you'll switch over to the T side, and then so but this is all just you reading the game, just like any viewer, right? You're going to expect action to happen in certain spots. Now, obviously, there are going to be these anomalies where, oh, somebody did something random over here and got a headshot, whatever. But the majority of the time, it is going to follow a pattern. And so the more experience that you get, and Anders and I don't know how many, like thousands of hours, basically. But we probably had 1,000 hours just going into it before we even had observers in CS. It's just time, and experience and practice. That's the long and short of it. There's no real shortcut unless CS:GO, the Valve, they did do the auto director, which revolutionized things and really made it interesting for us because now we could stay on the same. Apart from flipping here and there, you're really just staying on the same page with your co-commentator because everybody's watching the auto director, and so that allowed us to really clean up our broadcast, our casting, because all of a sudden we can talk about the same things. So that really changed things. That was cool, but for the most part, when it comes to you doing your observing live at events or you doing your observing, there is no auto observer or whatever, don't get hung up on the mistakes. Stick to your main storyline, stick to what you're trying to say, trying to talk about in that round or in that minute or in that moment. What's important? Focus on that. If something happened somewhere else, whatever, have faith that you are making the correct call and that what your story is the important bit of this particular round, and stay on that. Obviously, if all hell breaks loose and it gets out of hand, okay, you got to swap over there, right? Obviously. But for the most part, if it's an anomaly, then it's an anomaly. Oh, that happened. Cool. And we're still focusing on this part because we know that the meat of the round is going to happen here. So I think a lot of it comes down to just having faith in your ability to read the game and tell the story that you want to tell as a commentator. You're focusing on a particular thing. And that's been a massive point of debate with commentators. You still got some commentators today who absolutely refuse to have observers and who only want to observe themselves for that very reason, because they want to tell the story. They feel like they can tell their story better if they're observing the match. And then you have commentators like Anders and I who have obviously made the full switch over to just having professional observers do it because Prius is a killer. He does a great job. So I mean, there's still two schools even to this day. But at the time, it was a heated debate when it first started happening, having the professional observers and taking that away from us, our ability to tell that story directly away from us. It was a heated debate. It took a long time for people to start coming around to the idea of, oh, wait, hold on. This guy's actually listening to what we're saying and he's paying attention to our story as well. And so he's obviously going to accommodate us. If we want to talk about this, he's not like he's just going to go off and do this over here, unless you're casting with Star Series. No, he's going to be over here trying to pay attention to what you're doing. So there you go.
I do kind of want to add on to what you're saying, and I think it aids to what we talked about at the beginning. Get experience with everything. Like if you are the tech for the Smash stream or you're the tech for the CS:GO stream, you're learning about the ins and outs of everything that goes into a CS:GO stream, and then you pick up on that when you start commentating CS:GO because you already know the different, whether you're doing audio, whether you're doing observing, whether you're behind the camera, whatever you're doing, you're learning every component, and that makes you a better commentator in the game that you want to try commentating, right?
Everything bleeds into commentary. That's why it is everybody strives to be a commentator for the most part, is because commentary it has the potential to be everything. Yeah, that is kind of the reality of the situation. Machine right now, he's trying to cast with Henry, because he's an excellent desk host, but going into commentary will push him further or allow him to take everything that he's learned and push him further, and that's always the highest thing. But that's not to blow off the other roles, because the other roles are also there's so much detail that you can only get through practice, and that are so easily overlooked by viewers. The minutia of doing a good interview, knowing where to hold the mic, knowing how to handle yourself, knowing how to read body language and what this person is giving you, so that you're not asking a question that will fall short or fall flat. All these sorts of things. I mean, this is why I emphasize, if you get an opportunity to do something, do it, because you'll learn something that will carry forward and be useful for you.
I have another question at the front here.
Cloud9!
Hey, my name's Jordan.
Hey, Jordan.
To kind of touch on the point of Owl going to having like home and away games, do you think, with like you were saying too, like that the stadiums are doing well and whatnot, do you think that esports as a whole will get to a point where it's surpassing mainstream sports, we'll say?
Oof. That's a tough one, because the appeal obviously is much broader for mainstream sports. I mean, take soccer. It's kind of hard to beat kicking a ball around. Everybody gets that concept, that's why it's the biggest game in the world. It's so easy. The barrier to entry is very, very, very low. That being said, I mean, we're already bigger than certain sports, or we bring in more viewership than Major League Baseball and hockey, sometimes. So I mean, it's like we're already kind of there, right? Nipping at that level. So I think that yes, I think that I don't think that, okay, let's put it this way. I don't think that we've landed on the model that beats all for esports yet. I think that there's still plenty of room for competition to try and figure out a more sustainable model for these TOs, and to find the best show format for esports, whether we fully commit to competition being the center or entertainment being the center. I still feel like there's some TOs that are trying to find that just middle ground between the two. But when it comes to actually, when it comes to where we're going, it looks very positive, because I mean, dude, we're feeling like, I was just in Copenhagen this weekend where 12,500 fans were. It was a packed stadium, full house. And then you go, and then it's just like Philadelphia. You go everywhere, and you're able to. The audience is there. So I mean, I think stadiums are definitely going to be a big play. What I wonder about is, how do you finance a stadium for multiple days and make that rentable? Because it doesn't come cheap having a stadium. There's all sorts of costs involved, and it's definitely a big sink. And then, do fans have the stamina to stay day after day in a stadium as well? So I'm wondering, when do we actually make the leap? And that's kind of what Overwatch did, right? Where they just had the grand finals in Philly. Boom, done. One match. That's it. Now we're getting closer to sports. And now perhaps it makes it a smarter buy for these tournament organizers if they have to rent a venue for 2 days, right? Because you got to set up the stage. Right? Because that's the other thing. It's like, okay, we're going to rent the venue, but you're also not only renting the venue for the show days, you're also renting the venue for the days that it takes to build the stage and then tear it all down again. So there's cost all over the place. And I don't know if multiple days in venues is actually the way forward, or if we're going to start actually being able to just have 1 or 2 or 3 games in a stadium, right? A 4-hour broadcast or a 3-hour broadcast, if that's going to be the future, and if people are going to want to pay for that. So I think there's opportunity to experiment with that going forward with Overwatch League and with this Call of Duty League that's kicking off. I think there's going to be opportunity to experiment with that format to see if we can actually really get into the way that sports works, or fighting works, UFC or whatever, right? Like, can we just have a 2 to 3 hour broadcast or a 4-hour broadcast tops, and people will still pay to go there and pay top dollar to go there? I think then all of a sudden we're looking at some longevity for esports. Whereas right now, I don't know if it's sustainable to have these massive tournaments that last multiple days in stadiums. I don't know how that works for the fans or how that works for the TOs.
Did you still have a question, or was it answered? No, you still have a question? Sure. I'm on my way.
Hey, so it's Riley again.
Hey, Riley. We're getting to know each other, man.
Sorry?
We're getting to know each other. How's it going?
All right. You?
Yeah, this is good.
All right. So this one's a little less commentary related, but do you
Sure.
think there would be a big opportunity should another large company like Blizzard, Valve, or Riot choose to make a esports focused platform fighter like Super Smash Bros? Would that be more successful than Smash, as it's been had its fair share of problems with dev support, like Nintendo not wanting people to run tournaments at all a while back?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Nintendo have always been against it right from day one. They've been against esports.
yeah, 'cause
They don't want competition in their games. They want their games. They specifically design their games. That's why we've seen Brawl go the way that it has. I mean, they specifically designed them to be less competitive and to have more random elements in it because they want it to be party. They want it to be fun, right? And I'm not getting that out of thin air. I can't remember off the top of my head the lead developer for Smash, but I'm pretty sure I saw an interview where that's pretty much exactly what he was saying. Whatever. Point being, I think that's the gambit. That's the play that Riot are making with this fighter that we just saw. I think that's their bid to really step into that market and challenge Capcom, because really it's Capcom in the fighting games. Street Fighter V, even though I'm not a fan. I was a massive Street Fighter 4 fan. Played the hell out of that game. It was so good.
What was your name?
Add-on. I was a massive Gamer fan, man. I saw Gamer I was like, dude, and then I just started playing Add-on. Before that, it was Ryu. You go through the usual ones, right? Like Ryu, Akuma, all that. But like, I saw Gamer I was like, dude, this guy's rad, and I had to, and then I just, How do you go about it though? I mean, I think that there's definitely a space in the market. It's possible, but the fighting game scene still seems to be pretty reticent to actually committing to an esports model, even though they all their players are sponsored and all their players are getting their flights paid for them and they've got salaries and all sorts of stuff. So they're kind of esports already, even though they keep trying to fight against it. But I think what's going on, what's interesting with the fighting game scene is that they're trying to hold on to their identity in the way that esports, I think mainstream esports have given up, because everybody keeps getting cleaner and squeaky and nice and ESPN or whatever. We all keep trying to clean up our broadcast, trying to appeal to a broader market. And I think we're all kind of losing the path and losing what made esports interesting and made esports interesting for us to begin with. Fighting games seem to they're really trying to hold on to their identity. So, I mean, they've got their sponsors and everything. And I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to curate those sponsors to believe in the identity of the fighting game scene. And so that's why they're fighting against calling themselves esports and not fully going over, is because I think in their minds, if they think, oh, if we're esports now, that's it, we're Suits, or we're owned by Suits or whatever, and we've lost our identity. And so there's a really interesting, they're kind of like the canary in the coal mine right now. Or not, no, it's not really the canary in the coal mine. Maybe they're like the last island, the holdout that's keeping the dream alive. But I definitely think that there is a space in the market. Absolutely. I mean, Dragon Ball FighterZ was pretty good, except that the optimization was trash for PC, so I didn't play it. I mean, I played a lot of it, and then you try to play online, and then it's bad.
There's a kid screaming in the class. He's really quietly screaming. He loves Fighter Z.
Oh, dude, I love it too. Dude, don't get me wrong. I love it too. I'm just not buying a console. Like, sorry. I can't say the console thing anymore, but like, it's just, you got consoles and you got PCs and Master Race, yo. But the netcode is just so bad on PCs. That's why I think if the fighting games developers could actually not only do the consoles but actually develop good netcode for PC, they could probably just hit such a broader market. I honestly wonder. I honestly wonder what the numbers are, what their exposure is, and what their numbers are of the PC player bases. If they actually had good netcode, if they actually figured out how to make it so that I don't lag around the screen when I'm trying to hit a combo, right? Because I would still be playing DBZ today. I love it. I'm a diehard Dragon Ball fan, right? Like I've that's my childhood. So I mean, when that game came out, I'm like, right, playing that definitely. I don't even care. I bought a stick. I'm like, I'm in this, and it lasted all of a week because then I tried to play online, and then the game was trash.
You think Riot might do
Such a
it
shame.
correctly?
I think so because I mean, come on, PC, right? They built their bones on PC. So if they don't do it properly, I think that'd be a gigantic shame. It'd be such a shame.
We do have a couple of questions, but I kind of wanted to interject and ask a really important question that I think is not on everyone's mind.
Shoot.
But I wanted to ask you, are there any things that new commentators should look out for when it comes to rates or contracts or hiring an agent or kind of all that kind of like legal stuff? Is there anything that people should kind of keep their eye on?
Good question. Okay, that's a good question. I hadn't actually thought about it for a while. So I mean, in terms of agents, they're usually snake oil salesmen. So you need to be careful. There's no such thing as a good esports agent, and there's no such thing as a good esports lawyer. Esports, if you put esports in front of that, it's usually a failed lawyer or agent. To be frank, so don't buy into it. Usually, you will get taken for a ride. Um, I think it's much more valuable to ask those who are close to you for advice. I was very lucky. I had my dad. He helped me, but I also had done quite a bit of work up until then, and so I kind of understood how to negotiate and how to sell. Because basically I had 2 sales jobs, and I was crushing it there. So I understood how to sell, and then I understood how to work that out. And so I mean, you're gonna know if something's in a contract if it's fishy. It hits you in your gut. There's something there. You're like, this doesn't sit right. Listen to that. Don't just be like, this is fine. It's esports and all that. No, listen to your gut. If something seems wrong, try and find somebody who can help you out with that. Whether it be a parent's friend, something in your structure, in your support, in your circle. Go to somebody you trust before you go to some of these esports lawyers and whatnot. Right. Um, Man, don't go to. I mean, it's easy to say. No, I mean, there's always that truism or that saying of don't never work for free. But I mean, really, you're okay. Let's put it this way, because nothing's for free, right? Nothing is for free. But always now at the beginning, if you're just trying to get in, let's take it this way. If you're just trying to get in, do everything you can. Take every deal. If it's a bad deal, you might learn something, and you probably will learn something, and you'll not do that again. And learn by doing. The one thing is just be true to yourself. If you're on camera or not, just be true to yourself. Be honest to yourself, and don't try and put on a face. Don't try and put on a mask, because if you put on a mask, you're going to be stuck wearing that mask for the rest of your career. It's so hard to put on this fake thing, right? And then you're going to speak out. You're going to say something that is true to yourself and not to the mask, and then everybody's going to be like, "What the hell is this? This isn't who we know." So one way to avoid that pitfall is just be honest and true to yourself. Don't put on a mask. Just be what you need to be. But yeah, when it comes to contracts and everything, man, that's a tough one. It's thanks for asking that question, because it makes me realize that that's a bit of a pitfall, and that I need to put some more thought into that topic, especially today. Because before I would have said, come to Room on Fire, because Room on Fire was that was kind of the whole point of Room on Fire. We were commentators looking out for commentators. And so the idea was to have a group of commentators together with representation, and that could handle contracts, handle the usual traps, the usual mistakes that are made, skip all of that. You have our experience to draw on, right? That was the usual idea with Room on Fire. And I mean, I would encourage you guys, any of you guys, if you have any kind of questions like that, hit me up. I mean, my email is in my Twitter. If you ever have any questions like that, throw me an email, and I'll be more than happy to answer and help out if I can. But that's the kind of thing I think. Yeah, that's kind of my advice right now is I mean, I don't know if I answered that question well, but it's a tough question, man. Because we wing it, we wung it, and we had mentors. I had a mentor who helped me out at the time, um, taught me a lot about how the industry worked, but a lot of it is also just business. So I mean, you can learn a lot just by going out and getting a job in sales, and you'll understand real quick, what they want, what you want, how to handle that kind of relationship, because they want you because you're providing value to them, and you want them because they're paying your bills. And so you're always going to try and have um just media that kind of middle ground, right? But one bit of advice that I would give is don't screw anybody over. If you say you're going to do something, do it, whether you like it or not. If you say something, do it, because esports is very small. Everybody knows everybody who's worth a damn, and if you screw somebody over, it's going to follow you to the end of your days. You're always going to be known as the guy or the girl who screwed this up or did this or whatever. Don't do it. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And that's pretty much the best advice that I can give if you're starting out.
And at least there's another commentator, friend of mine in my room that's kind of like with us. We've kind of been exposed to, like, first it's like free flights, then it's like hotels, and then it kind of slowly starts to getting paid amounts here and there on top of travel and food and all that stuff. What are
That's
kind
usually
of
how it goes.
what are kind of some starting rates once you hit that kind of pinnacle point that you think are acceptable, or what are some tips to understand how to value yourself as a commentator, negotiating with the CEO and saying, "Hey, I'm worth this much. I deserve to be paid this much by going."
Sure. Man, yeah, that really is on what you can get away with. You gotta swing for the fences. You're never gonna get what you don't ask for. And the best ways that we've gone for it is just throwing a number out there and see if it sticks. I mean, you're obviously within reason. You're not asking for some ludicrous number, obviously, but you're trying to, like, hey, I made like, let's say I made $200 last time. I'll ask for 300 this time. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But if it doesn't, then you never would have got it, right? So, and if it does, hey, you made an extra $100, and then next time you can be like, I made $300 that time. I'll ask for $400 today, and then and this is a lot on field too, right? If you've got your mainstay people that you're working with reliably, regularly, your dream hacks, your ESLs, yeah, you're not going to try and bust their balls, because that's your bread and butter. So you want to develop a strong relationship with them where you're both trustworthy, you trust each other, and you're reliable. And so you're always going to go and try and stay on the level. I'm not saying not be on a level with others, but sometimes you have a random opportunity that comes up, and maybe you hike your rates up, because that's it's like, you've got this game publisher that wants to do this. It's just a marketing budget for them. They don't care. They're going to pay money. Double your rate. See if it sticks. If it does, awesome. You made extra money. If it doesn't, it's fine. But one thing I would say is don't work for exposure. It's something that actually comes up a lot these days. Like, oh, but think about the exposure that you're going to get with, like, Twitter and all that sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, but that's not paying your bills. Um, Even if it's a small amount of money, this is where I would say don't work for free. Is even if it's a small amount of money, ask for a small amount of money. Whatever gets you through, because you're going to notice as you work and get more experience and get more exposure to the others working in the industry, you're going to start to know and learn what the baseline is for getting in terms of wages, in terms of benefits, in terms of these sorts of things, right? A lot of this comes down to networking. And a lot of this comes down to, well, I mean, mainly it's networking. It's getting to know your boss, getting to know your producers, getting to know your co-commentators, and getting to know the industry. Uh, go to every event that you can, meet people face to face, show up, show an interest, try and don't be creepy, but try and have conversations, and try and see, like, what's going on, right? And because then maybe an opportunity comes up down the line, and that person has a face to put to the name. When you're there cold calling them, it's not like, oh, this random guy. It's like, oh, wait, hold on, yeah, we met at the bar that one time, and we talked about this. You're already ahead of the game. So when it comes to contracts, yeah, ask your parents. Unless you've got somebody who's a solid business representative, or somebody that's solid in business that you can trustfully go to, ask your parents. And otherwise, don't work for free.
And that really just applies to any role that you guys get. Like, it's a lot of contracts, and then it goes into full time after contracts, especially since it's like bread and butter of esports is freelance work, no matter what you're doing, really. So it's gonna be contract after contract until you make it to that full time. Anyways, another question over here.
Hello, it's Daniel again.
Hey, man.
One thing I always love to watch when I'm watching like a new esport or just any esport in general is casting patterns to see like what the play-by-play says and how the color follows up. You were touching on it earlier how Doa transitioned from League, and it was really cool to see like Doa was really good in team fights in League of Legends, and then Monty would follow up with a bunch of stats. Then they had to make the switch to Overwatch, and it was Doa just yelling for a long time. Monty would come in with 1 point, 2 points, whatever, and then Doa would just take it right on back.
Yes.
One question I wanted to ask is, what's your favorite game to like spectate in terms of like casting patterns?
Counter-Strike. Because it's the epitome of it's the best esports, hands down. It's the best esports for viewership and for hype. That's just me speaking from a commentary point of view. I mean, that's not me jabbing at any other games. I mean, I watch pretty much all the other top esports, right? Dota, LoL, StarCraft. I watch it all. But for me, it's still CS because of what I talked earlier about the ebb and flow, the peaks and valleys in CS commentary. And really, I think that's actually biological as well with CS, is that it's like a dopamine hit or it's an adrenaline rush, basically. So it allows for it to drop off again before the next hit comes, instead of that's a legit way to look at it, because you get into Overwatch and it's just like you're saying, right, where Doa is just screaming for 2 minutes, and that's how I felt at the beginning too, just like bah, and you're just kind of like maintaining this level the entire time, and then you're like, can I take a breath? Can I not? Is the action done? No, wait, it's still going, and then you're still going, and so you're just getting frazzled. You're getting stressed out. It's not allowing you to have those moments where we can make a joke and we can breathe a minute here, and then yeah, okay, this is interesting. Let's talk a little bit about this. Oh, you have a stat. Cool. What's the stat? Nice. Okay. Like those kinds of moments are important in a game, and that's, I think, the biggest hurdle for Overwatch is how do we still find those moments. And so for Hex and I, and this is the casting fashion that Anders and I essentially developed and worked on, that I think was pioneered also to an extent by Tasteless and Ortosis, which is the flow. And that, what I mean by that is essentially you don't have rules. You have play-by-play color. That's the thing that Monty and Doa are locked into right now, is Doa is the play-by-play and Monty is the color, and never the twain shall meet. That's a really rough thing to hold on to in Overwatch and other games, and I think it actually makes for a clunkier broadcast, because what I like is the flow, where it's supposed to be a conversation and both can fill in and chime in and have their hype moments, but also have their insight and have their information, and you're both bouncing off of each other like it's a conversation. It's kind of like, I read this commentary book a while back in terms of sports broadcasting, and I like the one about baseball commentary the most, because baseball commentary really feels like you're just hanging out with your mates watching a game on the couch at home, right? And that's kind of what I want esports to be like, or at least me peak esports commentary is you're just hanging out with your friends watching a match, and then you're all going crazy because some massive play happened, right? And you're all going crazy at the same time because that's just naturally what you want to do. Some massive, I don't know, you hit a home run or something, right? Like, right? And then you guys all chill down. Yeah, that was great and cool. Get some snacks, whatever. Like that's kind of where I want esports commentary to be. And I think that's possible with the flow, because with the flow, then anybody can pick up that hype moment. Either one of you, and even in a TriCast, anybody picks up that hype moment, you get that hype moment, awesome, and then you can go back into it and move along right at the pace that the game is setting. And so Hex and I try and focus more on that. Like Hex has stepped up a bit in the play-by-play department, and I've kind of had to step a little bit in the color, just to try and facilitate that, because Overwatch is such a high sports game, or high pace. But if you go back to like CS with Anders and I, whoever had the mic at the moment of hype ran with it, right? And then otherwise we're just kind of vamping and having a good time together, right? And then it's like, I have the mic, the happy deagles. I just was blessed to have that moment, and so it's gone down. But Anders has got Are You Kidding Me, Hiko, right? Like we all have our moments. That's probably the biggest thing for commentators, I think, is ego. And this is the thing that kills pairs, kills duos, and makes it very difficult for up-and-comers, is everybody seems to think, just like players do with frags, right, and stats, where they think, oh man, if I'm not dropping a 30 bomb, then nobody's going to like me, right? For commentators, it's like, oh man, if I don't have these hype moments, nobody's going to like me. And to an extent, it's true, but you need to check that out, and you need to have faith in your co-commentator. You need to have faith in the team because you are essentially a team. And so, whoever has the mic at that moment, you need to let run with it. And so, I've seen this way too much in the past where commentators will step on each other. Like, oh, the color's talking, but then there's this hype moment, and so the play-by-play cuts in and like right, and goes over it, and it just makes for a clunky cast because they don't trust each other, and one or the other is trying to dominate the cast. And so the ultimate goal of a commentary duo or a trio is essentially trying to find harmony, where you trust each other to the point where whatever is happening in that moment, you trust your co-commentator to handle it. And whether that's you having the mic or them having the mic, you always need to be looking to support your co-commentator. It's never about you dominating the broadcast. Maybe you get that opportunity, maybe that chance comes up and you have that hype moment and you run with it. But if your co-commentator is having that high moment, you have to do everything you can to support him. And that's to me is peak commentary. It's a team. You need to be a duo that works together in the good and the bad, and to support each other in the good and the bad.
We have another question, but one really quick question: which game has the worst ebb and flow?
Oh, I couldn't say. I'm looking over my shoulder right now because I saw Mike Morhaime out of the corner of my eye. Wait, no, please. No, it's fine. Overwatch.
Overwatch?
I think Overwatch is the most challenging game to cast. I think Overwatch is by far the most challenging game to cast I've ever tried to cast. Hands down. It is really it's really hard. It's a hard game to cast. StarCraft 2 had a lot more open fighting games. Every other game has the ebb and flow. Overwatch has the ebb and flow, but it's a staccato ebb and flow. It's really, it's just in there. And the pace that you have to maintain with Overwatch for so long, I think it makes it the most challenging game to cast by far.
Hi there. My name's True, and I used to cast Counter-Strike at a semi to pro level. I since retired, but I still have the passion for it. I can cast literally anything at I guess per hype. I like to hype it up. And I was going back to what you were saying. It's definitely very inspiring to hear this again. But I actually learned my style from Anders, which was no one's play-by-play, no one's color. You have this system where you go off this flow. There's a 1vx, your tone switches, and then you toss it off when you it's kind of like you basically know the experience of the game. You can kind of hand it off to your partner. Probably the biggest thing is, would you say that's like the final form for
yes.
commentary?
I'd say that's peak commentary. That to me, right? And this is to each commentator his own. But to me, that's peak commentary, is the flow. Because the flow is actually the most difficult form of commentary for the very reason that I just outlined, because it involves stuffing your ego in a box and having full faith and trust in your co-commentator. And that's really hard to do for commentators, and especially on-screen talent who, tend to have a bit of an ego, because you're obviously a persona, you're all this sort of stuff, right? You need to stand out, you need to have your moment, and that to me, the flow when Anders and I were at our peak, I think that was when we really were on the same page completely, and we really understood what was going on and what was necessary. And I think that's the highest level of commentary that you can hope to achieve, is to have that co-commentator with you, that you trust and have faith in, and that you guys both work together towards the same goal. You're aligned. I mean, the joke with Anders was that I was dating Anders, and I dated Anders longer than I dated my wife. Because basically Anders and I started working together, and that's the level that I saw it as. We were like this, right? And when we separated, it literally felt like a breakup. It was pretty funny. It was a weird experience because we'd worked together for so long, and we were that close, like call any time of the day, everything. We were on the same page, right? So that's what you need to strive for. I mean, and you can still use the flow with commentators first time, right? You can still use the flow with commentators that you haven't worked with before, because what it really is it's being the support guy. It's checking your ego, and you turn yourself into whatever the co-commentator that you're working with needs. And so that's where the superior level of commentary comes from. It's never about you in the broadcast. You're never supposed to be the star of the broadcast. You do everything you can to make sure that the game and your co-commentator look as damn good as possible, because usually what happens is you tend to look good too. And you may think, oh no, like I'm not, this is something where it's like, oh, I really wish I had the mic more often or whatever. Don't consider that. Consider the fact that you're making the broadcast sound excellent. And so when people are tuning in, and whether these BTOs or whoever are tuning in, they're not going to remember the details. They're going to remember, damn, that was a good broadcaster. Damn, those were good commentators, right? If you do everything you can to make it so that your co-commentator shines bright, you're going to shine as well by comparison, and you both will benefit. And so you can use this mentality for any co-commentator or any commentary pair or whatever situation you're in. Check your ego at the door, stuff it in a box. You don't need it. What you need to do is walk into the situation, into the room every day in the production room, and figure out how can you best facilitate the team. Something went wrong, doesn't matter. Take responsibility, move forward, and find a solution. Something needs to get done, same thing. Handle it. That's the sort of mentality that's going to get you really far. That's the kind of mentality that I've tried to. I'm not perfect, but I've tried to use. And I think that's the mentality that will get the most results, is by putting yourself second and try and really focus on what you can take ownership over and execute on, and all the while supporting those around you.
So knowing that everyone in this room has that advice, what is some more advice for them, either creating personas or meeting people outside this room who want to build their own personas and build their exposure? They're gonna meet people with egos, no doubt, right? What's
Sure.
a way to deal with that for the students here?
Leave them. If you got people like that around you, it's who said it? George Washington said that it's better to be alone than to be in bad company. And that's kind. I mean, obviously, sometimes you're going to be stuck, and obviously, sometimes it'll be unsavory. But for the most part, try and always surround yourself with people that you want to work with, and that you look forward to working with, and that you look forward to spending time with. And in an ideal world, although there is this bit of lesson where it really depends. Be careful with your relationships. You don't necessarily want to go into a business venture with a friend, because it might make things awkward if things go wrong, and you got to have that spicy conversation. If it's a friend, you might be caring a bit too much about your friend to make the right call. But care for the people around you still, all the same. Just always, have that mix. When you run into others, I mean, let people be themselves, but I gotta say, be you. Don't try and put on a face. Just like on the broadcast, in person, same thing. Don't try and put on a face. Everybody's been around the block. Everybody knows what's going on. I'm gonna see you coming from a mile away, and so don't. Right? Just be you. Be honest, and be authentic. Right? That'll go so much further than anything else you could do. Because if I enjoy having even a 5-minute conversation with you, which I almost always do, the people that I run into at events, I mean, I love meeting fans. Oh, they're almost always so freaking cool. I can count on one hand the number of bad experiences I've had over 8 years now. Like, people are really cool. So don't try and put on a face. Just be yourself. Be out there. Be honest, and that's what's going to get you further. Always. Don't try and put on a mask. If you put on a mask, you're stuck.
I think that's all the questions that we have primarily. I did want to kind of finish on one last question. And I feel like I already know your answer based on everything you've kind of said. But obviously, like I said, not everyone in here wants to be a commentator. Not everyone wants to be, at the same level that you are, or any of the Riot commentators that are out there, or CSGO or whatever. Some of these people might want to be content creators, right? They want to make funny videos on YouTube, or they might want to become streamers on Mixer or YouTube or Twitch or whatever. What is some advice that you have for someone that is afraid of the camera or wants to get comfortable in the camera? And how do you kind of approach that kind of new experience for some people that have never been in front of a camera or been on the mic?
If it really causes you deep anxiety, I would almost say to avoid it. And the reason I say that, all right, this is just personal, right? But I've never been nervous on camera. And I've never been nervous at a venue. It's just something that I started with and I ran with, and it always felt good. I could maybe I would get but it wouldn't be nerves. It would just be adrenaline. I would just be like, okay, cool, we're going live. When are we going live? When are we live? Right? Let's go. That's so. If it's in you, it's in you. I'm not saying to not try it though. If you try it and it feels off, but you still enjoy it, well, then there's something there, and you can explore that, right? Not it doesn't always come naturally. But I mean, if it's something that you're forcing yourself to do because X reasons, right? Even though you hate it and every aspect of it, you just want to play games, and games for you are something different. You don't want to turn a stream on or for whatever thing. Like, well, then fine. Nobody's forcing you to do it. You don't need to do it, right? You don't need to get out there. That's perfectly fine. Also, I mean, if camera bothers you, dude, one of the biggest streams ever on Twitch is Lyric. I don't even know what the guy looks like. That's not a camera, So it's like that's a point too, is that you don't necessarily need to go down this path that we see so many streamers go, where it's like, oh yeah, camera, and I got to do all this, right? Like Paladin Amber is someone who's killing it right now. But I like her stream because she's come up with that, the eyebrows and the camera switch and all that sort of stuff. And that's really clever, right? Because she really obviously works well on camera, and so she's playing to that strength where she's got like this separate thing, and she's playing to the camera and all that. Baller. She's playing to her strengths, right? So this really wraps into what I'm talking about with commentary, and also about carrying yourself around people. Is just do what comes naturally to you. Don't try and figure it out, because you'll naturally progress in towards your strengths. So if you're more funny, you're just going to be more funny. If you're it's like if you're more analytical, that's going to be your thing. Just follow the path towards your strengths, and don't necessarily go out of your way if it feels wrong, like really wrong. I'm not saying if it feels a little uncomfortable, but like if it feels really wrong, don't do it. If you really dislike being on camera, hell, you don't like taking showers in the morning and combing your hair, you just want to sit there and game. But that you don't need to care about that. Just don't put on a camera and stream anyway. Let your content, you're creating content for it to be fun. Like that's the thing. You're not looking to create a business out of it. If you're looking to get into this trying to make money right off the bat, you're going to be in for a real rough time. Because there isn't a whole lot of money, and there's money, but you have to. It's what is it? The Pareto distribution, or it's just you have to be at the top of the pack to really make a lot of money in this industry, and so you're going to struggle for a long time. So if you're coming into it thinking like wombo combo, I'm just going to freaking crush, and overnight, I mean, it'll happen to some, but for the vast majority, it's not. So if you're not just at the core really enjoying what you're doing, it's going to be a real struggle. So why do something like that, especially something that is going to be a hobby at first that you hope to grow into something, if you're not enjoying it at the root, right? And so find the stream, or find the content, find the way of creating content that you really enjoy, that you can see yourself just doing as a hobby for fun, coming back from school or work, and do that. And people tuning in, they will resonate with that. And they will see, oh, okay, cool. This guy's really into whatever it is he's doing. I don't know, painting Warhammer models. Like whatever it could be. That's I think far more important. I think a lot of my advice really stems down, or boils down to just be authentic, be honest, be yourself, and the rest will follow.
That's I think that's a really good note to kind of end it on, to kind of wrap everything up. I just want to thank you for doing this. I know it's kind of like, oh yeah, thanks for having me, but it really it means a lot to us and the students to kind of see you kind of come out and talk, and see somebody that they probably look up to right here on a giant whiteboard. Yeah, he's a real person. He's a so yeah, I just want
to here. You're looking into my home right now. You guys are in class, so this is my office.
Yeah. So I guess on the count of three, I just want everyone to say like thank you so much. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So that kind of wraps.
Thank you very much. Hey, I just want to say, actually, it just occurred to me, it's the first stream that's going on, but this is the first time that I've talked to a room full of students. So here we go. It's first for everybody, guys.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Obviously, the other class on Thursday will have Semmler as well. If you guys have any burning questions, you guys can come to that one as well if you want. It's not a full class. So if you kind of think of something after this, you can come to the Thursday one. Just not everybody, obviously. Let me know in advance. But on that note, thank you, Semmler, and we'll see you.